Hey, what's up everybody? Lawler here, your inside source for all things Rocket League. We are officially done with week 1 of the Winter Split. We just wrapped up NA Grid. If you guys didn't check out that video yesterday, make sure you guys go and see that. But today we're going to be recapping the EU Regional 1 that went down. Obviously 16 teams in a double elimination bracket, a little bit different from the fall split. So we'll be covering that, showing the highlights, kind of the big moments, and breaking it all down. But before we get into that, as always, if you enjoy the content, give it a thumbs up, as well as making sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you haven't already, any of my social medias, all that kind of stuff, make sure you guys go give those a like and follow as well. Those can be found in the description as well. Also, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, still confused about the format, whatever it may be, let me know. But without further ado, let's get straight into it. So the difficulty of covering this many teams in a bracket is there's a lot of matches. So I'm going to just try to do my best. I assume we'll throw up just the bracket here for the uppers, and then we'll kind of go through the notable ones in the lowers. The biggest things that I'm going to be paying attention to, and the things that I want to note, is obviously really standout performances, as well as teams that we were curious on how they were going to perform. Stuff like any teams with roster changes like Singularity, Dignitas, etc. Are going to have some concerns. Teams like Oxygen that are teams that have notoriously underperformed in regionals due to the kind of like stress that comes with a Swiss style bracket. Is that different now that it's a double elimination? Spoiler alert, kind of. But again, notable results, any teams that kind of catch your eye, things that may be out of the norm, that's what we're going to look for. So first things up, let's start with that top half of the bracket. We got Singularity, Rix.GG, Dignitas, You Choose, Oxygen, Stealth, Queso, Wolves. Two teams I've really kept my eye on. Number one, how is Dignitas going to fare now that they're using apparently Jack? Singularity started off super hot with Scrub, but then we got some shade from Archie. We'll get that in a little bit. Obviously just friendly banter between him and Scrub. But Team Queso, if you guys don't know, Team Queso was formerly Magnifico. They dropped Greasy and brought in VK Salen. And this is a team that made it all the way to the lower quarterfinals. This is a pretty big deal. You are ultimately ending as a top 8 team. I mean, so Magnifico is ending as a top 8 team yet again. I think that's a pretty big deal, but obviously going to be referring to them as Team Queso moving forward, as it is a new roster that has been picked up. But Magnifico again, now Team Queso, making it into another top 8 performance. This was a team that surprised many because it was with Greasy, but ultimately VK Salen has fit in pretty well. They look really aggressive, really dominant. And just put up good fights against all the teams. Primarily, they had a rough go against Oxygen, but that's I think just because they weren't really warmed up for the day, maybe. I don't know. As for Dignitas, both 3 over You Choose, the team that knocked out Swag, as well as Fadeaway, the new Fadeaway roster, consisting with Yukio instead now, alongside Freaky and Tigre. That's a pretty big deal. Matches, again, my recommendation is anytime you see matches that are kind of sweeps on Liquipedia, link to this bracket will be in the description, is you can click on the little info icon and it'll give you a little bit more details about how the match went. And even though it is a 3-0, one of these games is an OT and another one is a 1-goal difference. So I don't think it's necessarily just a huge blowout. Fadeaway was able to score in every single game. So necessarily to say like, hey, it's a clean sweep, Dignitas is amazing, kind of far-fetched. So I would not necessarily go with that. The other difficulty for Dignitas, and I'm kind of just jumping around, I'm focusing more on teams results rather than the overall bracket. I'll focus on the overall bracket when we get into like the winners finals and semifinal stuff. But Dignitas kind of a rough go. Not only do they then lose to BDS, because everybody loses to BDS, as I'm sure you've seen by the title, but then they immediately drop down to play Wolves and they lose 3-1 in losers round 3. So that means they're like in the top 14 teams roughly, which is better, I guess, than what they've been doing. Kind of here nor there. I mean, regional results have them a little bit higher, but unfortunate to see Dignitas, do so well against some other notable rosters and then drop immediately. Teams like Fadeaway do fall a little bit short to them. They end up losing to Singularity. Both teams fall to the lowers in the same round, so that's kind of difficult. Singularity ended up smacking Liquid. That was kind of a big one too. Liquid with Ronicky did not win a single game. But the new Singularity team with Scrub did look pretty stellar until they didn't. Scrub looks a lot more comfortable in this roster. It feels like he's actually impactful and he can do stuff. So a little bit more cohesion on their side, and it looks pretty well until they go up against top Blokes. And this is where the Archie joke comes in. Scrub pretty much didn't really do anything on the field, is what it felt like in that series. Octane.gg does like an overall like ratings based upon like all the stats that you have, whether it be goals, assists, shots, etc. and gives you like an arbitrary overall rating. And Scrubs was like 0.29 or something. It was really low. So Archie decided to be like, well, glad to see that Smilla should have been brought back, because Scrub didn't really do anything. So shade there. Obviously all in fun banter. They kind of go back and forth at each other all the time on stream. So all in good friendly fun. But then Top Blokes continues that on. Another team that I had my eyes on in Guild. Was curious on how they were going to do a Deevo now that Scrub is no longer there. And a win over Solar. They did have a first round bye, eventually losing to Vitality. Because it went to game 5, I was like, okay, sweet. You know, that means something to me. That has a little bit of weight to it. But then they dropped down, and they do beat Galaxy Racer, which is an unfortunate one for Galaxy Racer. This is the first time that Galaxy Racer has not finished in the top 8. They've been obviously trending in a really good direction, but have fallen short here. So missing out on that. Teams, again, just continuously getting better. But then you have them going up against Top Blokes, where Top Blokes really wins it out. And Top Blokes, I think, does definitely benefit from staying the exact same. This is a team that notably has been a top 4 roster. And in this circumstance, that stays persistent, where they are in the top 4. And that's something that you're seeing trending, as we're kind of just jumping all over the place right now. But both North America and Europe, their top teams right now are always in the top 4. I mean, you can look at this bracket as a prime example of, even with time off, these are the teams that I have expectations to make it into the semifinals. BDS, Vitality, Giants, and Top Blokes. And the one that is kind of the anomaly in that is actually Giants Gaming. For those that don't remember, they no longer are using Tux. They have brought over Itachi from FC Barcelona that completely disbanded before they picked up another team. But I was curious on, because Itachi now feels like he has really found his form and has started to get something going, is how is he going to perform on a new team that is a different environment? Obviously, Stake and Fenway are both very talented players. And Itachi, I think, is a player that can kind of gel with anybody as long as you enable him to do so. But for them to perform as well as they did, to make it all the way into the lower finals to go up against a surging Vitality, is, I think, a really good sign. Whether they can stay persistent with that, I personally think so. I don't think that team is going to do anything below top 5, I would say. It's more so like, can Barcelona and Guild, who are both at 5-6 spot, either A, keep their spots, or is a new team like Oxygen going to be able to fight through and show that, you know, the old format just wasn't in their favor? So some notable shoutouts for sure have to be to Team Denied. Team Denied made a pretty good run and beat some notable rosters along the sides of Bricks.GG, Solary. They had a really good fight against Team Queso before they fell short. I think Redemption is also a really solid team. A lot of talented players, but going up some pretty tough fights. The fact that they 3-0 the German squad and train hard, them going to 5 against Top Blokes, is probably what opened up my eyes to the situation more than anything. But again, they dropped then pretty quickly, and unfortunate for them, it's up against Stealth, who was that other team that had really good open qualifier results, but they dropped to Wolves. So I mean, you're looking at the top teams right now in this list, and based upon how things play out, it's kind of as expected. I mean, you got BDS at the top, Vitality 2nd, Giants 3rd, Top Blokes 4th. 5th, 6th is Oxygen, which I think is a big deal for Oxygen now that they've been able to take a step up. But you look at that 5th spot to probably like 16th. You can even throw in at times Triple Trouble and Train Hard and Redemption and Liquid. Liquid was probably the biggest one that's like, man, you're finishing in the bottom. That's pretty rough, but it really opens up the eyes to how close this region actually is. So I guess focusing on the important things now, and what I consider is kind of the winner semis, and then on, I want to get specifically into winner semis and loser semis and progress forward. So the big one is BDS at this point. Looks like, even though you can't really say it because international competition hasn't been a thing in over a year, BDS has been utterly dominant. They beat so many solid rosters on their win, and not only do they win against solid rosters, but they beat the only team that has really won anything else besides them in Vitality twice, which is a big deal. So BDS, even though you can't say they're the best team in the world, they are definitely looking like it. And I made this statement on Twitter about a month ago saying, like, I need to see BDS on LAN. I want to know how they're going to perform in a live environment. Will they flop super hard due to the pressure, or will it just make them better? That is a curiosity that I have. So really excited for BDS there. You're talking out of 4 regional events, or 5 regional events if you include the major, they've won 4 of them. That is absurd. It is not a thing that should happen, considering in Rocket League, the amount of parity that goes on and how difficult it is to stay at the top has shown that other than Dignitas, no team has really done it. Cloud9 has had obviously moments where they were absolutely dominant for that 1 year. But again, to stay at the top this consistently, especially with this much competition, is something that I'm going to be keeping my eye on personally, just because I want to know if it continues to trend for multiple reasons. Not only because maybe BDS is a product of this formula and this new format and circuit style where it allows them to get a bunch of reps in. And I don't know, and I don't think we'll ever get to know if that would remain the same if we were doing the old format for RLCS, where it was like 1 or 2 matches a week at most. But it's interesting to see on how this is developing, but it is making obviously every team better. So you can only have like so many excuses based upon how that goes. As for Vitality, they always find themselves in the top 4. They do that again here. The notable thing for me is that despite Giants putting up some really good results, Vitality wiped the floor with them in the lower finals. I mean, Vitality held Giants to 2 points. Game 2 was an OT with 16 seconds, and Game 4 was a 1-3 game as well. So they're either getting shut out or trying to keep it somewhat close. But man, Vitality really, as these brackets continue, is exciting. The other thing, obviously, with the format being the way that it is, if Vitality wins the first series, there is a bracket reset and they do it all over again. So far that hasn't been a problem. But again, some concerns on if that will be a thing in the future. You're looking at the runs that all of these like top 4 teams made for BDS. They end up going up against Singularity, Dignitas, Oxygen, Vitality twice. Obviously the benefit of playing less matches because they go through the winners and have a perfect bracket. You're talking out of every single game they played, 5 series, they dropped 2 games. 2 individual games is all that BDS did. This team is insanely good. You guys have heard me talk about it for quite a while now. This is a team that, since promotion relegation, has caught my eye. They have that it factor. The fact that they've been able to do it now for the majority of the year is pretty special. You look at Vitality's run. Vitality goes through Denied, Guild, Giants, and then Giants again. So unfortunate for Giants to be on the receiving end of that. As for Giants, Giants is going through Triple Trouble, Top Blokes, Team Queso, former Magnifico, Top Blokes, and then running into Vitality. So that is, to me, a good testament to how strong this team actually is. Very talented in a lot of closer matches. But the big one that catches my eye is the 3 over Top Blokes in the winner side, and then winning 4-3 in loser semis. So that's a good sign. The reason why I bring up the loser semis going to 7 being a big deal is more importantly because of, with younger players, especially like Itachi and the lesser experienced or less veteran-like players, those moments where it's kind of a do-or-die situation going the distance is a testament to whether you have the merit or not to get through it, the mental side. So coach, whoever else and their staff is helping with that, is a really good shout. As for Top Blokes, bringing it to 7 as well, I think is a pretty big deal. They're going through teams like Oxygen. Many still consider like a top 6 team in Europe because of how talented they actually are. But beating Redemption, losing to Giants, and then they have to battle through some other teams through lowers, which I think is also a big deal. I mean, if you're able to hold on to a lower bracket where you know everything is an elimination match at that point, that's kind of a tough strain on the mentality. And credit, obviously, you got to think that like Flame and Virtuoso are helping with that, but for Archie to still continue to perform in those moments is, I think, a pretty big deal. But they do beat Singularity, they do beat Guild, they do beat Oxygen, which I think is probably the biggest one in that lower quarterfinals, because that's when they move into best of 7s. But ultimately losing to Giants, I think, again, it's going to be a battle of who makes it to the grand finals nowadays. But BDS will be there, is pretty much my assumption, unless they drop out early for some reason. And then it is up to the other teams to try and catch up. I will say, though, used to do the grid for the Galaxy Racer team, with them dropping early to Team Queso, former Magnifico. They do beat Sauce Squad, they do beat Endpoint, and then they ultimately lose to Guild. From what I saw on Arju's Twitter, they were dealing with some massive issues when it came to internet, which is really frustrating. There's one of him like on the backboard, I think it was, and like he phases past to the far corner, and the ball is like just, it's bad. Like he was going through some problems. So unfortunate to see that happen to anybody, and hopefully that stuff gets cleared up. But I'm pretty keen on Galaxy Racer. I think they could have made a deeper run based upon what I was seeing in that lower bracket, based upon how they played against Endpoint. Them to have the results they did against Guild didn't really line up to me. So seeing that as a future tweet, I think was much to my surprise as to why, like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. You don't want to blame lag, but again, it's an unfortunate one. The big match that I kind of want to dive into, though, specifically, though, is BDS versus Vitality in the grand final. Because out of the gate, Vitality starts 2-0 and has some really good results and is like, okay, you know, Vitality is here to fight. You know, they got some momentum. Is this going to happen again? And there was people tweeting about it as well. You know, the whole lower bracket run thing is going to happen again. And it was good that it didn't, I think, for a multitude of reasons. But after watching Vitality in game one, I was like, oh, shoot, is BDS going to lose this after having such a dominant day and sweeping them the first time? They then come back. It's an overtime in game number 2, which is a testament to any good team. If you see a team that is able to immediately after losing a game, whether it be a shutout or otherwise, come back and win another close series, which is pretty common. Usually game 1 is a feeler match. It's pretty close unless one team is absolutely dominant and better prepared for it. Game 2, it usually gets a little bit closer in the gap between the goals differential. But usually the team that won first will win second. That's most commonly how the trend goes. Game 3 then is the team that was losing their like adjustment period. It usually takes about like a 5-10 minute period for you to recognize the changes and get adjusted to what's happening. And then it flips the other way. So game 3 is kind of that pivotal match. But the difference though is with BDS here, game 2, they immediately make that adjustment. It goes into 53 seconds of overtime. They win. Game 3, 3-1. Game 4, 4-1. That is now multiple losses in a row, where it was a close one, 2 wins for BDS. It's now Vitality's turn to kind of figure it out or battle back, similar to game number 2. And you'll see a trend in those, where now in game 5, it is another overtime, this time only 23 seconds, but it is BDS on top this time and closing it out, which I do personally think that Vitality probably should have won that OT. But again, merit to the best team in Europe that I can say convincingly in BDS. It looks like their reign of terror is going to be around for a very long time, which is very exciting. We have a long time until we get another grid for North America. Europe is going to be coming up shortly here, and I am very much so excited to watch how these will play out, because I do think there's going to be some excitement with how the difference in format may have an effect. Overall, what I'm trying to say, BDS is really, really good. Vitality is the only team that stands a chance against them at this point. I think if you take BDS and you put any team against them, BDS is the favorite, obviously, and it's not even a question. It's unreal how dominant this team is. It's very reminiscent of when Gale Force / Dignitas was the best team in the world in winning multiple championships together. And I do think it's a shame that we don't get to watch them on a live event situation, and I hope it does happen soon. That's going to wrap it up for the recap today. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, as always, drop those down below. Shout outs to the editor and putting this all together as always. And if you guys do enjoy the content, thumbs up, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. We're trying to hit 30,000 by the end of the year, if it's possible. I don't know, but hitting those stretch goals, trying to do what we can. And I do appreciate the support as always. But that is going to wrap it up for me. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.